Hey everybody, welcome to Board Online, Board Offline. Today we have a 5 reasons review of Hadrian's Wall. So I do these reviews when I've reached either 20 plays or 20 hours of gameplay with a game. In Hadrian's Wall's case, I actually have 20 plays, and since the plays take roughly an hour apiece, around 20 hours and 23 minutes of playtime. So we're going to get right down to this. I'm going to give you 5 reasons you should buy Hadrian's Wall and 5 reasons you should not buy Hadrian's Wall. So if you've been interested at all in this fairly complex roll and write style game, there's no actual rolling. I mean, it has that feel to it. It's like a combination of a roll and write and a worker placement and a flip and write, and there's it's a pretty unique feeling and combination of game mechanisms there. So we're going to get down to the table and we're going to review Hadrian's Wall. All right, y'all. So Hadrian's Wall is a 1 to 6 player game. They recommend for ages 12 and up, and it says it lasts about 60 minutes, which I have found to be true. It's by Bobby Hill from Garphill Games. So we're going to get into this, and the one of the first reasons that you should buy Hadrian's Wall is if you like the feeling of doing one thing that chains into, a dozen other things. That is the type of game you've got here. And so here, let me just pull this out, and then we'll get the 2 player mats out here. So this is what the player area looks like when it's set up, and this is the type of game where you're gonna have, you've got the cost in the brown labels here, and then anytime you fill out a box, which normally you're filling from left to right, but anytime you fill out a box, you're going to get whatever's inside the box. So sometimes there's going to be nothing, sometimes you're going to get 2 things like this, or just 1 thing like here. But what that does is when you initially, so in this case, maybe for mining, I'll do it twice, which means that I would have to have 2 of these servants, and I would spend the servants, and then I would fill out these 2 boxes, and then I would get resource production. That's what that hammer is, resource production, right? And which is going to help me at the beginning of every round. And then I would also get a resource, which is one of these bricks here. All right, and then maybe that brick, I didn't have it before. Maybe that brick then lets me do the build a section of the wall. And so I spend the brick, and now I'm going to get this yellow civilian or citizen or whatever they're called. I believe they're called citizens. And so now I have the yellow citizen that I didn't have before. And so now I'll spend this citizen over here, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll do, maybe I'll come down here to the patricians, spend the citizen, and I'll get another resource that I, again, didn't have before when I started this turn. And so then I'll come back over here, and this time, I'll spend it, I don't know, maybe just on another section of wall. So I fill that out, and I don't get anything. But because of, that one thing that I got, I then chained into a bunch of different spots. And that's a very a simplified version of how turns can work out. I mean, I've had turns where I really felt, oh, here's the last thing I can do. I did it, and I got something back for it, and then all of a sudden, on that last thing I could do, I end up doing almost 10 other things because I keep finding ways to continue chaining it until I get, until I completely run out of options. So this game absolutely has that feel to it of, you're never quite sure that your turn is going to be over, that you really, if you're paying attention to what you're doing and being careful with how you're spending stuff, you could really stretch your resources out by continuing to gain benefits as you make your different selections on here. So the second reason that you should buy Hadrian's Wall is if you like a game that provides multiple paths to victory. So we'll just go through kind of what each of these people do and what the different sections are that might end up gaining you points as you go along. So points are actually down here: renown, piety, valor, and discipline. These are tracks that as you go up these tracks, they're worth, down at the bottom here, they're victory points. So it's literally every tick mark is, or every box that you fill in, is worth 1 point at the end of the game. So you really want to try to, you can focus on all of them, or maybe you focus on 1 or 2 of them and trying to move up the chart. As you're doing that, these people over here, the traders, performers, priests, operators, and patricians, all kind of are related to one or two of these specifically. With the with the performers, you can see you got these different spots where you're able to get renown with them. So, but then with the priests, there's a lot of spots where you can get piety with them, which makes sense. The operators, you have the discipline that shows up in their track here. And with the patricians, you have the renown as well over here. And then you've got some spots for valor. And so they all can help provide different things. And then in addition, as you're going along these tracks, you can see you're able to fill in your cohorts, which cohorts have discipline and valor. At the end of every round, the picks will attack. And let me show you what they look like. You have these cards that you'll draw from these cards right here. And so at the end of round one, you're just going to draw one card. And in that case, that symbol means that the picks attacked the left cohort. Well, if I had one box filled in, then the left cohort would be defended and I would not lose anyone, or the left cohort would be defended, and then I would not lose my opportunity to win valor, which is what this number here is. So in round one, I can get 1 valor. In round two, 2 valor. Round 3, 2 valor. Round 4, 3 valor, 3 valor, and then the final round, 4 valor. But let's say that the left cohort came through, and let's say that this was undefended. I draw the left symbol here for the picks. At the end of the round, they get through. Well, then instead of getting valor, I've got disdain, which this track right here shows you at the end of the game. If you have 1 disdain, you lose 1 point. You have negative points. If you have 2 disdain, you lose 3 points. 3 disdain, 5 points. On up to 9 disdain is going to get you negative 22 points at the end of the game. So as you're playing, you have these different things that you're trying to build up these tracks with, and then you're also trying to defend against the picks, which could basically count as negative points at the end of the game. With this section right here, these are beginning of round bonuses that you can get. So resource production, for every circle filled in, you're going to get an extra resource to use, an extra one of the bricks to use at the beginning of the game. For each dot, so there's 2 possible dots here. For each dot you fill in for the small and large hotel, you're going to get an extra citizen, the yellow workers, at the beginning of the game. The small workshop and large workshop provide you with builders, which are the blue workers at the beginning of the game. And then the small road and large road actually provide you directly with victory points at the beginning of the round. I believe it's at the beginning of the game. I meant every round is what these provide you. So that there's so many different paths to victory, paths to gaining these victory points. And, maybe you decide, you are not going to really focus on the cohorts. You're gonna have to do a little bit with the cohorts for sure. You can't just leave them undefended. But maybe you're not going to super focus on them because the apparators down here at the baths, you can bribe people in the area. So let's say that you were getting a decent amount of disdain down here. Twice a year, you can go over here and spend resources to bribe people and turn disdain into, basically get rid of disdain. You'd fill in the disdain circles, and then they would no longer count against you, no longer count as negative points. You can do that 6 times throughout the game. So obviously you can't just let the picks come through because you're never going to have enough bribes to deal with all the disdain that you're going to get from that. But that's one way that you can maybe not focus on the cohorts as much as you want. And as far as building cohorts, you can see obviously building the wall is going to provide you a bunch of opportunities to do that. Building the Sippy provides you 3. Building, that's the wall guard, and then the wall down here provides you more cohorts as well as the fort. And so if you are going to try to really build up these cohorts, you're going to have to pick 1 or 2 of these to really work your way through. Speaking of which, another way that you really have to consider what you're doing is the fort has these chains attached to it. And so each section of fort allows you to then build more wall and sippy. So you cannot build this or this, it's chained until you have built this section of fort. And once you build this section of fort, you can then move along. But once you get to here, you can't build this section of fort until the medium granary is built. And so there's all these interconnected things here, again, that provide all these different paths to trying to get to where you want to be. And it's really one of those games that, you know, if you try to do everything, you're going to end up doing nothing, basically. So it's some very interesting decisions there. Number three, the third reason that you should buy Hadrian's Wall is that despite it feeling initially very complex, and I mean, you can see how this looks. Despite it feeling initially very complex, a very smooth flow develops after only about, I'd say, half a game, really. So basically, at the beginning of a round, you draw a card. Here are your, this is from the pick deck. Here are your starting resources for this round. You're going to get 2 soldiers, 1 builder, 2 servants, 1 citizen, and 2 resources. But then you're going to also draw 2 cards from your personal deck. And so on here, one of them will be, we'll say we'll use this one for our 2 additional resources. So we would get an additional builder, an additional citizen. All right, so that is our resource. And then this one is going to provide us an end of game goal, which slides right under here. And so now at the end of the game, if your total gladiator strength is 4, then you'll get 1 victory point. Whereas if it's 12, you get 3 victory points. Gladiator strength is over here. And so that's a whole different thing for you to focus on. It kind of gives you maybe some a path to really kind of guide you where maybe you should start focusing some of your energy. So that's the beginning. That's how the beginning of the round starts. All right. Obviously, your opponents are all going to be having their own cards that they play as well. So, you know, your opponent might pick this one for their additional resources, and this one constructed landmarks for their end of game scoring, you know, and so they have these different things. Now, in addition, what your opponent chooses, so let's say this is the one they chose to get their extra people, they got an extra servant, an extra citizen. Now, for the market up here, you can use your opponent's market symbol here to fill this in, and so you have one down here as well. But theirs is different, so you could use theirs. But by using theirs, you're going to be providing them with some additional things that they can do. And this symbol right here, you can see you both have the same, so you wouldn't use theirs, you would use your own. But that's for the scout action down here for the patricians. So everything that you do has possible ramifications for what I shouldn't say everything, but this decision at the beginning of the round has possible ramifications for what your opponents are going to do. But that's the beginning of the round. You basically have drawn a card here, drawn 2 of your own cards, put 1 here for end of game scoring, put 1 here for some additional help during the round, as well as what you can do for the market or the scouts. And then you start playing the round. And all it is in the round is you spend one of the workers that you have and fill in a box. And then if the box gave you a benefit, you take the benefit. Otherwise, you spend the next worker. And benefits can be used immediately, you know, if it's a resource, or you get workers over here and workers right here. So those can be spent immediately. And that's it. That's all there is to it. And then you keep going until you have no more resources or workers. And then that's the end of the round. And then at the end of the round, you will, in this case, round 1, draw 1 picked. You see where they're attacking. They're attacking the right cohort. If you have it defended, then you gain the valor shown there. If you don't have it defended, you're going to get disdain. Now, one thing I should say, so let's say we were in round 2. So we're in round 2. All right. So in this case, you would draw two picks are attacking. In this case, it would be the right cohort and the center cohort. So let's say the right cohort was defended, but the center was not. So 1 pick got through. Then you have 2 valor here. But since 1 pick got through, you lose 1 valor. And so you get 1 disdain for the pick that got through, and then 1 valor. So it actually is not an all or nothing thing. It subtracts from what's available there. But So again, the game feels pretty complex to begin with because of all the choices and because of the rulebook too, which we'll talk about that in a minute. But in the end, it's not that complex. It is draw a card at the beginning of the round for resources, choose your own cards for end-of-game scoring, and it's a few additional resources or workers, and then play your resources and workers, and end the round by drawing a picked card to see where the picks are attacking, or the appropriate number of pick cards to see where the picks are attacking. The fourth reason that you should buy Hadrian's Wall is that it is a simultaneous play game. So once everyone understands what's going on, you all play at the same time. You're all, basically just doing your own thing. And there's a little bit of interaction, if somebody ends up using one of these cards that somebody else has, they want to use the symbol, the shape for the scout, so they want to use the market item there. Then there's a little bit of interaction there with providing the other player with some additional options because you're going to be paying them to do that. But other than that, you're just doing your own thing. And because of that, additional players won't necessarily or shouldn't really increase the playtime at all. Playtime should remain pretty steady no matter how many players you have because of that simultaneous play, which is a pretty cool thing for a game that has as much meat on its bones as this does. A game that is, a lot of times with a game like this, you might expect that more players is going to equal more playtime, but it should not in this case because of simultaneous play. The fifth reason you should buy Hadrian's Wall is if you've been looking for a roll and write with some meat on it, then while this is not technically a roll and write, it has that feel to it. And it certainly has meat on its bones compared to a lot of the roll and write options out there. So like I said, people refer to this as a roll and write all the time, but there's no dice. It's kind of a flip and write, except it's like a flip and write combined with a worker placement because you get these workers and then then you're not really placing the workers either, are you? So it's this, it doesn't really neatly fall into any of those categories. You get the workers and then you just spend the workers and then you write on the board or on the sheet. But it really has such interesting options and ideas when you're playing it. So it feels, I generally prefer more complex games. Not more complex than this. I just mean this level and above, and so a lot of the roll and writes that initially were coming out were fun, sort of. I've got 20 minutes, let's knock out a quick game of I don't know, Gonshon's Clever or something like that. But if I wanted to sit down and if I have time to really sit down and play something that is going to take an hour or more, then the roll and writes weren't anything that I would necessarily want to pull out. But then this one right here, again, scratches that same itch, and it has all the complexity that I love in my games. It doesn't take up a whole lot of room. So, I know I've got these bags over here, but really, in terms of the amount of room it takes up, you're looking at it right here, right? These bags right here, you can keep in the box or whatever, and pull workers out as you need them. And that's basically it. That's all the room. A small coffee table is plenty of room to play this game, and it really, really, really is satisfying. And I mean, when you chain together, a long turn like that, like I was showing you earlier, it is such a satisfying feeling and really enjoyable feeling. And I love the way it feels. I love everything about the interactions in this game, and I love the complex decisions without truly complex rules. the rules certainly appear to be complex at first, but in the end, when you really look what's going on here, and once you get into the flow of the game, it's not that complex. It's very easy to understand. The iconography is on point, perfect, is very clear again once you understand what's going on with it, and it's just a really great experience. Okay, so 5 reasons you should not buy Hadrian's Wall. So the rules are hard to get through, and it's one of the few times when it's because it is too detailed, and that sounds funny to say, but for basically they explain every single section as if you had no idea how the previous sections worked. And I mean, this rule book is so. I mean, including the scoring example here, we're at 22 pages, right? Yeah, 22 pages. Then you have a little bit of extra stuff here. You do have this on the back for the iconography, so that's good. 22 pages of rules, and really, it probably could have been cut down to 15, maybe 11 or 12 pages. And the big issue, like I said, is that when you're going through this, initially, it took me, so I was probably about halfway through the rule book to realize, they're re-explaining how to use each of these from complete scratch every time. But there's some concepts that are the same between all of them. I mean, the concept of the brown label has the cost, and the white is the benefit. That, you shouldn't have to. So basically, let's say when they're doing mining and foresting, it's going to say, with mining, pay 1 servant and then check the box and blah blah blah, get this resource or whatever, and then wall guard, it goes on and re-explain. And granted, there, I'll show you here for the wall section, for the mining and foresting section. So that takes up this right here, right? Cohorts, mining, wall guard. But then you get down to Sippy, wall and fort, and it's a longer section here. Granaries, again, longer section. And then as you get back, it's really on the citizen tracks, especially over here, is where it really starts to get where it looks like this whole section here is for this strip right here. And theater, the gladiators are actually one of the more complex ideas, even though I don't feel like that necessarily had to be. I feel like this probably could have been streamlined, how I'd explain it somehow, but maybe not, because they are a little hard to grasp. But so this right here is, again, for this little strip of board here. And then the priests have their own 1 page, and then baths here. And as you're looking through this, it just, for whatever reason, when I read the rules, I really felt like, holy crap, what am I getting into? And then I got out here and actually started playing it. And I was like, oh, this is way more clear, way more streamlined than the rules made it feel. And it's a hard thing to explain until you read this. And I've heard this multiple times from multiple people. You read the book and you think you're getting in this mega complex game, and then you play it and it's not nearly as bad. All right, so then the second reason is the board itself can be very daunting. The player pages here can be very daunting. A lot of that, I feel confident, is, so it looks super busy. A lot of that, I believe, is all the artwork behind it, which is great. I really like the artwork a lot. But apparently that does trigger a feeling of complexity and trigger a feeling of busyness. Having all that artwork behind all this other stuff that's going on, because they have actually released, I don't know if it was an official release or if somebody did it on their own, but on Board Game Geek you can download these player sheets without any of the background artwork, and a lot of people apparently enjoy playing it that way. But then there are lots of options here. I mean, it is a busy a busy situation here. There are just so many options, and it can feel like, well, where in the world do I start when you first start playing the game? And the best thing I can do is tell you, just jump into it. Just pick something and go. And as you slowly start seeing how everything interacts, that'll help you then make decisions in the future. But it is daunting just looking at this. And the combination of this with the rules that feel more complex than they necessarily need to be can really be a barrier to entry initially for somebody. The third reason that you should not buy Hadrian's Wall is that while it certainly has simultaneous play, the complexity of the game may leave you unable to use that initially. And depending on the types of players you play with, maybe not at all. I have one group that I don't meet up with a whole lot anymore because we live in different places now. But that group, throughout the whole game that we played, they wanted to keep doing individual turns. So I would go and then player 2 and then player 3 and player 4. And that was because for them, they were just too afraid they were going to be forgetting stuff or marking stuff off they shouldn't be, and not paying the right costs and not getting the right benefits. And so that's how we play it, and so obviously it's a longer game in that case. But then my current game group that I play with primarily, I think I've only played 2 players with them, right? I might have played a 3-player game. Anyway, about halfway through that one, we started playing simultaneous play. And when that happened, it was just, it really just took off at the speed of the game and everything. So if you have a game group that the people are going to want to be a little more cautious with making sure the rules are being followed properly, or they just, this is maybe on the upper end of the complexity scale for what y'all are used to, then you might not be able to take advantage of that simultaneous play. And in that case, you're going to have a longer game than 60 minutes. It's going to push it out to, hour and a half. If you're playing a 4-player game like that, maybe even 2 hours, depending on, again, analysis paralysis could be a big problem here for somebody. So all those are factors you should take into account. The fourth reason you should not buy Hadrian's Wall is, unlike many roll and write style games, flip and write style games, it's using paper instead of dry erase. Now, this is, of course, something that you can solve yourself. You can take a few of these sheets, you can laminate them, you can get some dry erase markers. That's all legwork you're going to have to do after the fact. That's all aftermarket stuff you're going to have to do. Now, granted, it comes with a ton of sheets. I've played primarily solo. I've played a few games with other people, but if you're playing, it plays up to 6 players. If you're playing 6 players, does it say how many sheets are in here? It doesn't, just 2 game pads. So I'm not sure how many sheets are actually here. But if you're playing with 6 players repeatedly, you're probably going to burn through these way faster. So I've played 20 times, probably 16 times were solo, so that's only 16 sheets I've used. And then, so I've probably used somewhere around between 20 and 25 sheets at this point, and I've still got this many left over. So it's not a huge issue, but if you're concerned about waste or you're concerned about running out, then you're definitely going to need to take the time to laminate sheets, eliminate at least 6 sheets, and then buy some dry erase markers as well. And then finally, the final reason you should not buy Hadrian's Wall is that it is especially if you're playing solo, it is a beat your own score type game. So now they do provide ranges for scores here to tell you, even if you're beating your own score, you also can see, well, was this a good score or not? So for me, when I'm playing solo, I don't even consider it a win unless I finish in the 50 or better range. If I'm down here, then I consider that a loss, and I will try again at that same difficulty level. It took me, real quick with the difficulty levels, the numbers here, so green, yellow, and red, those are the different difficulty levels. That's telling you how many picked cards you're going to draw. That's the only way difficulty is adjusted, is by the number of picks that are coming through. You can see in round 2, you draw 2 or 3 for the hard difficulty. And on the way up to round 6, easy is 8 picks, medium is 10, and hard is 12. And let me tell you what, dealing with 12 picks is something else. So essentially it is beat your own score. Now there is, from what I've heard, a official campaign that is, I believe, free to download on Board Game Geek. Or maybe not even Board Game Geek. I might have to go to the Garphill Games website. But I believe it's free, and it is a campaign for Hadrian's Wall to give you some, I guess, some objectives to work towards. So that's pretty cool. But as it comes in the base game, it is beat your own score. And, you know, a lot of people can either take or leave that for solo play. So there you go. That was our review of Hadrian's Wall. Be sure to check out our other 5 reasons reviews. We have several of them up already, and more will be coming in the near future. And until next time, for Board Online, Board Offline.